All right, guys, welcome to Coding in Java Part 2. This is the second video. I will assume you have watched the first part, and so you already know all the stuff that was discussed there. Why would we use Java again? Super popular, object-oriented. There's an expectation that you'll have at least some familiarity with it if you're in any sort of computer science job. And we're going to use repl.it. So remember, guys, showed you how to set one of those up in previous videos. repl.it. You're going to create a new Java replit and name it Coding in Java Part 2, like you see here. All right, and let's begin. So the first topic we're going to talk about is a simple conditional statement. So conditional statements work like this. If, and then we're going to give it a condition. Then we're going to put an open and close brace. Do this. So if this condition is true, and it can be any kind of Boolean statement, it can be mathematical, or it can be just a true or a false, then this code will activate. If this condition is false, this code will not activate. So let's create a variable here. I'm going to say integer x equals 5. And let's say we want to know if x is greater than 10. So if x is greater than 10, we'll print out left off the out there. Now notice it's not greater than 10. I've assigned it to be 5. So that conditional is going to fail. And when it fails, this code will not activate. So it's not going to, oh, forgot my semicolon. So this code will not activate. It'll just do nothing. Also there. All right, hopefully no more semicolon problems. So nothing happens. But what if I made it 15? Now watch. Well, in this case, the if statement will activate, and it tells me x is greater than 10. All right, so what if I wanted to know if a number was divisible by 3? So we'll say if x mod 3 double equals 0. Now let me explain this, because there's some weird stuff going on here. The modular arithmetic, you've heard me talk about that before, but it's the percent symbol. It divides the first number by the second and then returns only the remainder, not the quotient, but the remainder. So I know if the remainder is 0, then that number is divisible by 3, because the only way for the remainder to be 0 is if it was divided equally by 3. All right, so we're going to print out x is divisible by 3 if this is true. Okay, so, and this will be true for both because 15 is divisible by 3. What if I said 16? Well, 16 is greater than 10, so this first if statement will be true, but the second one, it's not divisible by 3, so it's going to fail. It's only going to print out x is greater than 10. It won't print out x is divisible by 3. Well, what about 6? Well, 6 is not greater than 10, but it is divisible by 3. So in this case, only the second if statement will be activated. All right, so hopefully you guys get the idea on that. Complex conditionals. So sometimes we want to create compound logical statements, and I'll comment this stuff out. And we're going to make sure you've got the import statement up here, because we're going to use a scanner for this next bit. So I'm going to say scanner scan equals new scanner like that. And then I'm going to use that to ask our user for their height. But first, let's prompt them. So I'm going to say to my user, what is your height in inches? And then I'm going to, I want to make this an integer. So I'm going to say integer, Height equals And then I need to put scan dot next integer function. So that's going to check for the next integer the user puts into the console and assign it to height. And then we're going to categorize that height. So if height is less than, and I need my parentheses here. There we go. So if height is less than, say, 51, my shift button was stuck. That's weird. Okay. If height is less than 51, we want to print out something about their height here. And I'm going to say, you are short. Not nice to be so blunt, but this is just a computer, so we won't get offended. All right, if height is greater than or equal to 51, and now I'm going to use this compound feature, and. So the double ampersand means and. So I'm going to say and height, let's see, less than 55. Now notice I'm including with the equal sign the left bound and excluding without the equal sign the right bound. Okay, and I'm going to say you are on the short side of average. And we'll just copy and paste that here and change this to 55 and this one to 60. Let's do 61 here. Nope. Yeah. Actually, I should. That's way too short. I should start at 61 because that's 5'1". Yeah, this is going to make more sense. And we'll do 71 there. And we'll tell these people they are average. And now another one. And we'll start with 71 here. So that's 5'11". And go up to just over 6 foot. Let's say 72 is 6 foot, so 74. You are on the tall side of average. And then finally, if, let me copy that again. Save myself some typing here. So if height is greater than or equal to 74, and let's say less than, what's the tallest a person would normally be? Say like 7. I think there's some Guinness Book of World Record people that were over 8 feet. So 8 times 12 is 96. We'll put you are tall. All right, now we'll do one more that has an or. So actually, let's add a condition here. What's the shortest a person would ever be? I think 2 feet again, Guinness Book of World Records. So we'll do 24. All right, so now we're going to add one to catch our really weird entries. And we're going to use or. So if height is less than that 2 feet, and height is greater than that 8 feet, we'll put you may not be human. And this should be or. So that's the double vertical line. And remember that the double vertical line means or. So for an or statement in logic, either this or that can be true, and it makes the whole thing true. For an and statement, both the left and the right conditionals have to be true to activate. All right, so we've got a bunch of ands and an or here, and I'll say you may not be human. Okay, so let's test this out for some inputs. Assuming it parses here. Might have to do a little debugging. Okay, so I'm putting my height 70, your average. Let's put in my daughter's height, which is 5'1". Says she's on the short side of average. Put in one of my fellow teachers' height. He is 6'5", so that's 77. Tall. All right, let's put in a weird one now. Let's put in 10 inches. It says you may not be human. Okay, so you guys get the idea. We've created a height categorizer with compound inequalities. All right, so let's talk about an if, else if, and else chain. So here's how this would work, and I've made a little visual over here. So you got if condition 1, do this, and then else if condition 2, do this, but only if condition 1 is false and also if condition 2 is true. And then else if condition 3, do this, but only if condition 1 and condition 2, and it should say are false. Fix that while I'm thinking about it. And also condition 3 has to be true. And then else, do this if all conditionals above fail. So an if, else chain works like this. So the if is just a logical test, nothing weird going on there. The else if is only tested if the if fails, if the if's condition fails. So this code, it wouldn't even test condition 2 unless condition 1 failed in this case. And it wouldn't even test condition 3 unless condition 1 and condition 2 failed. And then finally, this last one would activate only if 1, 2, and 3 all were false. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's create some code that uses that. We'll categorize a number here. And use this code over again. Change it a little bit, of course, and I'll say, what is your favorite number? And we'll say user num. Okay. Let's say we want to categorize this. So if the user num, and I need my parentheses, is greater than or equal to 0, and user num is, and that should be a capital N, less than or equal to 99. Actually, let's just say 9. Yeah, we'll do it that way. Then we're going to print out something. And let's print out your favorite number is 2 digits. Or 1 digit, rather. All right. And now we're going to use an else if. Control Z saves lives, by the way. If you ever do what I just did, highlight something and then delete it, you can always hold Control and hit Z, and that undoes your last action, so you can get it back. Control Z saves lives, or at least saves you from punching the wall or something. All right, so now let's do greater than or equal to 10 and less than or equal to 99. And we'll say, and this is going to be an else if. Your favorite number is a 2-digit value. And else we'll say your favorite number is weird. And we don't need a question mark there, we need a period. Copy paste errors can give you some weird typos. Okay, so if it's between, and we'll say just straight up else right here. There we go. So in if, else if, and else. So this is going to happen if this is true. This is going to happen if this is false and this is true. This is going to happen only if the if and the else if are false. So it's going to ask me what my favorite number is, assuming we have no errors here. I'm going to put in 84, and it's a 2-digit value, it tells me. Let's try single digit. What's your favorite number? I'm going to say 7. So let's pick one that's going to activate that else. I'm going to pick 1050. And it tells me that's weird because it's outside of the bounds of these two. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Checking an item for a list, or checking a list for an item, I should say. This is something I want to talk about, and it brings up a fairly strange aspect of Java. You can't use, and I should say an array for a string. You can't use the double equals for string comparison. So don't use double equals for string comparison. You need to use the dot equals method. So use dot equals for string comparison. So let's make a list of things. And I'm going to say string. And then I'm going to use the brackets to indicate what I'm about to do is a list. And I'm going to say classes equals, and then I'm just going to make a list of the classes I teach. So coding 2, AP Computer Science A, Pre-Calculus, Coding 1. Yeah, that white space bothers me. Okay, good. And Capstone, which is kind of like a life skills class. Okay, so that's going to take the variable classes and assign it to this array of items, strings. And remember that for an array, everything has to be the same type, and it all has to be this type you declared. So I couldn't put a number in here, for example, if I tried to do that. See what happens. And you see Java doesn't like that very much. So it has to all be the same type. All right, so let's say I want to check that array for a certain item. So I'm going to use a for loop, and I'm going to say for integer I equals 0 until I is the length of the list. So classes dot length, and then I want to iterate, should use a semicolon there, by 1. For some reason I always want to make that a comma. Should be a semicolon. Okay, good. All right, so that's going to run through I equals 0, I equals 1, I equals 2 until it gets to the length of the classes array, then it will stop. So we're going to say if, and then we want to know if classes I, so the ith entry of classes dot equals, and then here's what we're checking for. Let's check it for coding 1. And if it's there, we're going to print that class is present. Or in the array, I guess I could say. All right, so we'll print this out. Uh-oh, forgot some stuff here. All right. So it says that class is in the array. What if I check for coding 3? Notice it doesn't do anything. I could have an else here, and we could print out that class is not in the array. So when we check for coding 3 this time, it's going to activate that else. So one problem, it did it every single time through the for loop. So that's not ideal. So one way to fix that would be to say else if, and then I'll say, what in the world? Key got stuck again. It's not the best keyboard in the world. And we're going to say, all right, so it's kind of weird how you do this. You'll say exclamation and then the thing dot equals and actually I should put it the other way. So classes I goes there equals coding 3. So that's going to say, and that should be a string. All right. I think I might have too many parentheses there as well. Believe that's right. Okay, so this exclamation is the not. So if not classes I equals coding 3, in other words, it's something besides that, we'll print that class is not in the array. Actually, I think this will also go every time through the loop, but still good that we got a chance to play with that not operator. All right, so we won't worry about that. That meets our criteria anyway. Okay, so I've got a task for you guys, and that task is first, create code that asks the user for a number and tells them if it's odd or even. The hint is to use the scanner in the next integer function. Also, another hint, mod2 double equals 0 is even. And then second one is the second part of the task is create a list of your 5 favorite bands. Make code that asks the user for their favorite band and checks to see if it is in your list, and then lets the user know if you share the same band that you like. And then lastly, create code that asks the user for their age and tells them which age category they fall into. So I've got child, 1 to 17, young adult, 18 to 29, and so on. So pause the video, try to complete those 3 parts of task 1, and come back and I'll show you how you did. Okay, welcome back. So let's look at the solution I came up with here. So task 1, create code that asks the user for a number and tells them if it is odd or even. So I set up a scanner, as you've seen me do several times, and then I prompt the user, what's your number? Then I save that to the variable num as an integer, important part of the process. If I had used any other variable type, this would fail. Well, double probably would work, but integer's your best choice. Excuse me. So then I say if that number mod 2 is 0. In other words, when I divide that number by 2, if the remainder is 0, that's what this asks. Then I'm going to print out it is an even number. And notice I use the variable itself here. So it's a response that is contingent upon what the user's input is. And then I say else print is an odd number, because if it's not even, it must be odd. It's kind of like a coin flip. I don't even need to check. If I say it's not tails, well, then you know it's heads. If I say if it's not heads, then you know it's tails. So it has to be one or the other, and therefore if it's not even, it must be odd. So let's check it out here. First, I'm going to test it with 55, and it tells me that's odd. Now we'll test it with 56. And we see that that is even. So that's working. Part 1 satisfied here. Comment that out and go to part 2. All right, so for part 2, I created a string array, and I just put 5 bands in there that I like. And then I ask the user and give them a prompt here. What is your fave band? And then I save their response as a string. Very important to use a string because these wouldn't parse as numbers. And then I print out your favorite band is, and I repeat back what they said to me. Then I'm creating a switch here, and this is something you haven't seen me do before. I created a Boolean switch, and I set it equal to false by default. Now I'm going to go through their list, and if at any point the band they picked matched any band in my list, then that switch is going to be set to true. Otherwise, it will stay false. Now here I've got an if statement. So if that switch is set to true, if it has been triggered, then I'm going to say, I like that band too. Otherwise, I'm going to say, I don't like that band. That's really not an either or kind of a thing, but you guys get the idea. So let's execute that code. And first I'll put in a band that's not in my list. So let's put in Poison. I don't like that band. Now let's put in a band that is in my list, CCR. See them up here. Creedence Clearwater Revival. I like that band too. Okay, so you see that works. There is task 1, part 2 complete. And then task 1, part 3 said create code that asks the user for their age and then categorizes them, given a set of categories. So I just used a string of ifs. I could use else ifs, but it wasn't necessary the way I set it up. So first of all, I asked the user, what is your age? I've set up a scanner here. Then I use that scanner to assign the next thing they put into the console, the next integer, to that variable age. And then I check if the age is less than or equal to 17. And if so, I print out you're a child. Then I check if it's between 17 and 29, including 29. And I print you're a young adult, and so on. So let's run this and put in some different inputs. All right, so first of all, what is your age? I'll put in my age, 44. Tells me I'm an adult. Let's put in my youngest daughter's age, 21. Young adult. Let's put in my grandma's age, 90. She's a senior citizen. Let's put in 5 years old. You're a child. You get the idea. So this is a age categorizer. Hopefully you guys figured those out. If not, that's okay. Take a second and look through my code. I've attached it at the bottom of the video and figure out what you might have done differently. Okay, so let's go on to the next topic, and I'll comment out this old stuff. And the next topic is fairly complicated, so I'm going to use a visual here. All right, and so that's going to be a multi-dimensional array. So a multi-dimensional array is declared with the type. So it must, every element in every dimension must be the type that you declare here. Here I'm declaring an integer array, and notice the double brackets. So that's not just an array, but it's a multi-dimensional array. And then I give the name, num array in this case, equals, and then an open brace. So this opens the entire array. And notice subsequent sets of braces each indicate new rows in the array. And each element in those rows indicates a column in the array. And notice we number from 0 in every case. So that numbering from 0 can get particularly hairy in this case. Okay, so if I put that in and execute it, it will assign that array to that variable, but it won't print anything out because we haven't. All right, so if we switch over to Replit here, we'll see that I've pasted that same code here. And we've got row 0 here, row 1 here, and row 2 here, and column 0, column 1, and column 2. So 0, 1, 2 on the rows, 0, 1, 2 on the columns. I made it a 3 by 3. You could use arbitrary size up to the constraints on the memory of the computer. So you can make it basically as big as you want to. But I did a 3 by 3. Okay, so let's look at this first print command I've got here. I'm printing out the 0th row and the 0th column. Do you see how that's going to be 1? And then for the next one, I've got the number 1 row, which is this middle one here. And then the number 2 element in that row, the column 2, which is 6. So it's going to print out 1 and then 6. And then this last print command here is number 2 row, number 1 column. So that's going to print out 8. So it should print out 168. Yep. So here I've made a string array, multi-dimensional string array, and whatever variable you declare here, every single thing in your array has to be that type. So remember that. Easy to make a mistake that way, I showed you earlier. Okay, so if I want to print string array 1, 1, then that's going to be the number 1 row, which is this one, and the number 1 element, which is this one. That counting from 0 can really mess you up. So it's going to print string 4 in this case. All right, so here's a task with regards to multi-dimensional arrays. I would like for you guys to create code that asks the user for their first name, last name, height, weight, age, and address, and saves it as 6 data pairs in a 6-dimensional string array. And then write code that loops through that data in your array and then prints it out nicely formatted on separate lines like you see here. All right, so pause the video, see if you can do that, and come back. All right, welcome back, and let's review the solution here to task 2. So you were to create code that asks the user for their first name, last name, height, weight, age, address, and saves it as 6 data pairs in a 6-dimensional array. So the first thing I did was set up a scanner so I could ask the user questions. Then I created a string, called it profile, and it was first name and then blank, last name, blank, height, blank, weight, blank, age, blank, address, blank. So that's all blank. Well, the categories aren't blank, but the values they're equal to are blank. So then I say a for loop here for I is 0 until 6 because there's 6. And I could also say the length of that, but it's a little weird with a multi-dimensional array. So better just to use 6. And then I is going to iterate by 1 each time. Remember, another way to say that is plus equals 1. That just means the same thing as this plus plus. In other words, it goes up by 1 each time. System out print line, what is your, and then the question will come from here. And then it's going to say the answer, variable answer is set to the scan next line, and we're going to set profile I1 equal to answer. So these categories are going to be populated with the user's answers. And then write code that loops through that data and prints it out nicely on separate lines. So here's the solution to that bit, and we'll just run it all at once. So and I used a different variable here, j, but I could have used I. So integer j equals 0, j less than 6, j plus plus. We're going to print out profile, the first column, and then the second column for each of the 6 rows. So the first column equals, and then whatever they populated that second column with. All right, let's run it and see how it goes. First name, Chad. Last name, Salyer. Height, 70 inches. I could put 5'10" because it's a string, but whatever. What's your weight? 230. What's your age? 44. What's your address? I'm just going to put 188. So, and there it loops through and prints it. So, mission accomplished with that. And again, I'll post the solutions to these tasks as an attachment to the video, or a link to them at least, so you guys can check that out if you need to. All right, next, let's talk about methods in Java. So methods in Java are a little weird, and I'll comment out everything we've got so far. Remember that the main code block, and I can just put that right here. Remember, the main code block starts here, and I've got a ton of commented out stuff, but it ends here. So we're going to go outside of the main code block to define a method. You don't have to, it's just the way I like to do it. And now you're going to declare public static, and that just means it's going to be available to other functions. This means the output is going to be the same regardless of certain factors. And now we're going to declare what type of output we want. So I'm going to put void, meaning it's going to have a built-in mechanism for giving something to the user. So it's not going to return a value. So if you say void here, it will not return. And I'm going to call this a greet method. And it's going to take a string name. And we're going to print out yeah, hello plus name plus hope you have a great day. All right, so I'm just going to make sure everything's kosher here. Yep. So we've created a method here. It's a public static void method named greet method, and it takes a variable of a string and a name. We haven't called it yet, so we need to call it in the main code block up here. So if I say greet method, and then I'll say my name. Now watch the output over here. And it's going to execute that method, and you see the output here. So that has a built-in output. And remember, that's the void type. Now let's make another one. Let's make a public static, and most of the methods you make will be public static till you get to a higher tier of programming skill. And this time we're going to return an integer, and we'll call this sum method. And it's going to take two variables, integer x and integer y. So what this is going to do is it's going to return x plus y. Now, the way I'm going to call this one is different because it does not have a built-in output. I have to call it as a argument of a print command if I want it to output to the console. So I'm going to call sum method, and I'll do 4 and 8. Forgot my semicolon. Seen me do that a time or two. Still doesn't like it. Let's see. Where's my... Oh, I need one additional parentheses there. Those are the kind of things that happen when you're coding. You leave out a little symbol somewhere and you have to go back and figure it out. It can be tiresome to watch, but it's important skill for you to develop. Okay, so here they printed out from the built-in output method I created. And so you create your methods here, and then you call them in the main code block up here. So even though this code precedes this code, Java still works fine that way. Once it encounters this, it will go through the entire code to find it. So you don't have to worry about precedence here. No matter what the order is, it will work just fine. But you want to define your new methods outside of the main code block and call them within the main code block. And remember, you can have a built-in output, like the first example I did, or you can have a return of a variable, in which case if you want it to output to the console, you'll have to call it inside of a print command. Okay, so another task for you guys. I would like for you to use the code from task 4 to create a method named profile builder that runs that code and returns an array. Use the method you created to make your own profile and save it to my profile. So try to complete those two parts of task number 3 and pause the video while you do so and then come back. All right, welcome back. Let's see if we figured this out. So here's my solution, and it's kind of out of order because we make the method first, and so the methods go here. So this whole mess you see me highlighting here is my method, and I just used the same text or the same syntax that we had in our previous task where we made a profile builder. Okay, so public, static, and then a string array. So I'm making a string array is what I'm returning here. Profile builder, and then scanner scan equals new scanner system.in. So it's just creating a scanner. String profile, so that's where we made the blank one, and then the for loop where we populated those blanks. Then we're going to return profile. All right, so that's the task, first part of the task. The second task was to use it to save a profile, your profile to my profile, and then I've got some code here that will print it out. So let's run through this. All right, so it says, what's your first name? Remember, we went through this before, but this time we saved it as a method. And so there we go. Saved it and then printed it out for me. All right, so the main code block is where I executed the method, and then outside of the main code block is where I defined the method. So once again, I'm attaching this code to the video at the link at the bottom. Make sure and go down there and check that out. If you weren't able to figure it out, you want to compare your answer to mine, see maybe where you went wrong. Okay, next. Indefinite loops. So these are loops that run indefinitely. In other words, you don't know how many times you want it to run. You may want it to run 5 times. You may want it to run 10 times. You may want it to run 1,000 times. You don't know. So indefinite loops. Making sure. Yeah, I think I got that right. Okay. Yeah, am I in the main code block? Yes. All right, that can get a little weird with these sometimes are difficult to follow. If you click left click to the right of them and you come up, it'll show you the one it's paired with. So see, if I do this, I see that it's paired with that. So that means I'm in the main code block as long as I'm before this one. Okay, so indefinite loops. So they're going to run an arbitrary number of times until some condition is met. So I'm going to create a switch here. I'm going to say Boolean run equals true. And then I'm going to say while run. So what's going to happen inside here is that code is going to execute over and over again until it is broken. In other words, until we use the break command or until I set run equal to false. So as long as run is true and I don't give it the break command, this is going to iterate over and over again. So let's say we want a running sum of some numbers. Let me declare a variable outside the while loop. We'll say integer x, well, we'll call it total equals 0. And let's give the user a prompt here. We'll say give me numbers and I will add them to the total for you. And then we're going to say integer x equals scan dot next integer. And then we'll say total plus equals x. So that's going to add x to the total. But one problem here, this will never end. So I need to give it one more thing. I'll say type Q to quit. And we'll add something here to test for that. So if actually that wouldn't work. Or type 0 to quit. There we go. So if they add 0 to the total, that will quit. So if x equals 0, print. And break. All right, so let's do that. Uh-oh. 95. Ooh, forgot that one there. And forgot one there. And forgot one there. Boy, I'm bad at that. I think that's it. Okay, good. Still doesn't like that. This needs to precede that. So I had those out of order. Should work now. Once again, debugging your code, a very important skill to have. All right, so let's add 55, let's add 66, let's add 88, let's add 104, and some big old number, and then we'll type 0. And it tells me the total of all that junk I put in there was 15767. Okay, so one more thing we need to review before I give you guys your next task, and that is dynamic lists. So something Java does poorly is the native array mechanism in Java has a fixed length from its inception. So as soon as you initialize a variable, it has a certain length, cannot change. It's immutable, so it stays the same. That's problematic. What if you want to make an arbitrary list, a list of who knows how many things until the user is done? Well, you can't do that with the default array in Java, but you can do it with an array list, which is part of the Java utilities package. So if you do this command, which we already had in there to get our scanner function, it also adds array list functionality if we need it. So assuming we have that import command in place, then the syntax to create an array list looks like this. You got a list, and then we're going to name a variable type because it does have to be the same type. And let's make this one a string. And then your variable name can be whatever. We'll call it AR list. And we also need the variable type here. So that's going to create a dynamic array. So something that is of arbitrary length. So let's want to say we want to make a favorite bands list. We'll call it a band list. All right, and now we're going to say Boolean run equals true. And then I'm going to say while run. I could just say while true if I wanted to eliminate this step, but it's good to know about Boolean variable types, so this helps us remember that. Okay, so we're going to say prompt the user. forget your semicolon. And then we're going to say band equals scan dot next line. And then we're going to add band to that list, and the syntax we use is dot add, the dot add method. So I'm going to say band list dot add, and then I'm going to add band. And we need to make a way to quit, so we'll say type Q to quit. And then we'll add something here. We'll say if band dot equals, remember when we compare strings, we need to use the dot equals thing. Let's do print the band. So for, well, actually, we'll just break. Don't worry too much about printing it out just yet. All right, so watch how this works. Oh, don't forget that. Don't forget that. And it says maybe there's some issue with these. Yeah, I think I'm missing one of those. Okay. There we go. That should work now. Oh, I should say string here. Maybe I didn't initialize that properly. Again, debugging. The more complicated your code is, the more you're going to have to do that debugging stuff. So let's just put in some bands here. We'll put in rat. We'll put in quiet riot. And we'll put in, I don't know, Steve Miller band. Then we'll type Q, which quits. Now it doesn't do anything after that, and that's okay, because we wanted to populate that array list is all we wanted to do. So, all right, now to iterate through the list, the array list, it's a little different. We're going to have to use the .get method. So we're going to run a for loop, and we're going to say for I equals 0 until I is less than, and this should be band list dot size. So this tells us, and notice I'm not using length method because it's an array list. The same methods aren't valid. So I have to use the methods that are appropriate for an array list, and to get its length I need dot size. So this is only when you're using an array list do you have to use these, or a few other things, but array list effectively for the purposes of this lesson. All right, and then we'll go up by 1 each time. So I'm going to print out band list, and notice I don't just use the index. You remember how we did this for regular arrays. For an array list, I need to get I, like so. All right, so let's do it one more time. And, uh-oh, what in the world? Oh, not initialized. Dang it. It's acting weird here. I think it's not an error. I think it just was taking its time. All right, here we go. Rat, quiet riot, white snake, and then Q. And then notice it prints them back out for me at the end. So this is the syntax you would use to print out stuff from the array list. All right, so now you've got all the skills you need to do the next task, which is to create a function, myBudget, and let's use camel case there. that takes an arbitrary number of user inputs for budget categories and amounts to be spent, and it creates an array of that length with budget category and amounts as values. So they just smash together to one value. The function should keep accepting inputs until the user input's done, or you can use Q like I did, it doesn't matter. But give the user some means to stop the loop. All right, so pause the video, see if you can accomplish that task, and then come back and we'll see how you did. Okay, welcome back. So this is a little bit more of a complicated solution that we'll talk about here. All right, so we've got our import command, can't leave that out. And we created a scanner. And then notice I created a new array list named budget, and this is outside the loop. Then I created that list, and then I initialized the integer I, because I want it to be 1. And then I said while run, because I wanted a counting variable, a variable that I could count each time, so that it's the number ith category, number 1 category, number 2, number 3, and so on, each time through the loop. So I is going to iterate by 1 each time. And it says, what is the number 1 budget category, or type Q to quit? And if it's Q, we break. Otherwise, I save that response to bcat, budget category, as a scan next line. And then systemout.println is going to prompt the user a second time for each loop, and it says what's the number I budget amount, and then it's going to scan the next line and add that to b amount, and then it's going to iterate I. So I is going to go up by 1, so that it's 2 the second time through, and 3 the third time through, and so on. And then I say budget.add, so I'm adding this to the budget array list. So I'm adding tabbed over, then the category, then a semicolon, and then 3 tabs, and then the budget amount. So that's what I came up with to make it format pretty nicely. And then here's command, just like you saw me use for the previous list, to print out everything nicely formatted. So let's run through this. Let's imagine we want to create a budget. Okay, Replit taking its time again. Here we go. So what is the number 1 budget category? We'll say that's the phone bill, and we'll say that's 200 bucks. What's the number 2 budget category? We'll say that's the rent bill, and we'll say that's 500 bucks. What's the number 3 category? Well, say groceries, and that's 500. And 4 category, I don't know, Netflix, and it's about 30 bucks. Well, 20 bucks, I think, actually. And then we'll hit Q. So notice then it gives me this budget, and the formatting's not perfect because some of these words are bigger than the others, but I think you guys get the idea. So that would be a possible solution. Plenty of different ways to do it. So if you did it a slightly different way and it works, perfectly fine. But I will again attach my solution as a link at the bottom, and you guys feel free to compare your answers to it and hopefully figure out where you went wrong if that is the case. Okay, so one last topic is classes. So to create classes, you're going to create a separate file. So if we go to Replit and we'll add the add file here, I need to add file for whatever class I'm creating. So I'm going to make a person class, and I'm going to name it person.java. And so this is going to be where I'm going to populate the code for the person class. Notice I can switch back and forth here. All right, so here's sort of a little template for creating that class variable. So we're going to add sub variables to our class, and let's name this class person. And the variables we want will be, let's say, age and string name and string job. So change this to person as well. And we want class variables here. So here we're going to create a situation where when we assign an object of this class, these variables are automatically populated with whatever we put in. So we're going to put in, let's see, integer person age equals age, string person name equals name, and string, and that should be a capital S here too. Just saw that I didn't do that. String person job equals job. So we're populating the object with these variables by default. Okay, wait a second. Syntax is just a bit off here. Let me fix it real quick. So we just declare them up here, and then we'll set them equal in here. Yeah, actually the other way around. All right, so age equals person age, name equals person name, and job equals person job. Okay, and I think every one of those needs a semicolon. All right. Okay, so now let's talk about some methods here. So if I want to add a method to my class, in other words, you remember how on ArrayList we had the dot get method and the dot add method and so on. So when you have an object in a class, you can have methods that are usable on that class of variables, and we'll create one here. We'll create greet, and all we'll do here is just print out something. And we'll say hello, and then plus person name, and then plus hope you have a good day. All right, so we're creating a method for our variable types here. And let's create another method. We'll call this one job ask. And once again, we'll just print something out. So we're making this code inside the method super simple. But you could make it as complicated as any of the things we've done so far. You could do inside these methods if you wanted to. Now we're going to call their job. Need a space here. All right, so we've got two methods. We got a class, and then if we go back over here to main, and of course I got all this other code commented out, but we're still in the main code block. Let's create an object in the person class. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to say new, and it's lowercase person, isn't it? Nope, uppercase. That should be uppercase too then. There we go. Okay, so actually, I'll take it back. This new goes over here. Person Chad equals new. All right, new person. And I believe the order was age, name, job. Okay, so let's run this and it'll tell us if anything is wrong. Uh-oh, forgot a semicolon over here. What a surprise. That's only happened about 1,000,000 times. Okay, so still got a few errors. Let's figure them out. Says line 14 here. Oh, hold on. I think I know what the problem is. All right, yeah, so I think we need to change these to just the shortcut variable. Let's try that. Okay, I think that went okay. All right, so let's call some of these variables real quick with our class. All right, here you see the syntax I'm going to do that with. So this is going to call that object.name, which is Chad, and that object.age, which is 44. So this is an object in the person class, and we've assigned it these attributes: age, name, job. Let's call some of the methods on it. So we'll do Chad.jobAsk. Is that how I set it up? Yeah, that should be capitalized. So if I run that method on it, there we go. So you see that happening. And then what was my other method again? Greet. Okay. Chad.greet. Okay, so what did we do right there? We created a class called persons, a whole new type of variable, and it's going to have 3 subvariables: age, name, and job. And here we created the inheritance situation. And here we defined the first and then the second method. And then over in the main code block, we assigned an object to that class named Chad and gave it an age variable of 44, name variable of Chad, and a job variable of teacher. And then I called its name, the name of that object, the age of that object, and then I ran the 2 methods on it. Okay, so you're ready for the very last task, the very last one of all. Let's see here. So, all right, so last task, create a class named myPet with parameters name, species, and age. Add methods for .play and .feed, which print out something in the console. Create an object for a pet you have. Make one up if you don't have any. And call both methods you created on that object. So stop the video, try to do that, come back and... All right, let's review my solution to this task. So the pet file, pet.java, should look like this: public class pet with a variable for name, species, and age. And here I do that inheritance syntax. Then we've got 2 methods, play and feed, both of which have no return value, but they'll print something out to the console. All right, now main. So in main, I will first of all create an object, and I named my object Doggo, and it's a new pet, and my dog's name is Titan, and the type is a dog, and he is 9 years old. So then I'm going to print out his name. This wasn't part of the task. This was just to remind you guys how to do that. And then the task was to call the 2 methods you created. So let's run that. And you see it prints out name, age, and then it runs those 2 methods. Okay, so that's it for Coding in Java Part 2. Appreciate you guys watching, and I appreciate you guys um, at the library allowing me to make these videos. A really cool opportunity, and I hope everybody has a good day, and hopefully see you sometime soon.